Welcome to Building the Premier Accounting Firm. This is a podcast dedicated to individuals both starting and building the premier accounting business in their area. As a show, we're dedicated to helping accounting professionals confidently and competently offer quality accounting services to get paid what they're worth. Each of these episodes is a conversation with tips and tricks to help you apply principles in your company that are related to such topics as marketing, lead generation, ideal clients, pricing strategies, accounting services, value-added services, workflow, practice management, staff training, client onboarding, client retentions, and much, much more. I invite you to actually record and listen into this podcast as well as subscribe so that you can actually take advantage of the many things that are offered and provided here. Now, one of the things that I'd like to do is introduce myself. I happen to be Roger Knecht, president of Universal Accounting Center. We are a post-secondary school working with accounting professionals to give them the training and the resources they need, the coaching and support to both start and build the premier accounting firm in their area. I've been doing this for 20 years now, and in those 20 years, I've had the pleasure of working with many individuals as they've gone through this journey of marketing their services, acquiring clients, onboarding them, and retaining them, and while offering the quality services that they provide. I'm excited to have today a special guest. This is Jeff Borchowa. Jeff happens to be a business coach, author, educator, and curator of all things related to business efficiency and technology. Jeff first joined the accounting world back in 1991 and has spent the bulk of his career working with and advising small and medium-sized businesses. Jeff happens to have experience working with all sizes of companies, from solo entrepreneurs to international organizations. The focus in Jeff's career has been to find new and better ways to integrate innovation and technology to enhance the customer's experience and improve efficiency in business. Now, Jeff's journey has been a unique one in that he's had opportunities to be very innovative and work with wonderful mentors in his career. Jeff has been very fortunate to have been in a position to learn from and compare their ideas and actually work with the best of the best in the profession. Now, Jeff would like to do nothing more than free business owners from the stresses created by high-volume commodity work, allowing them the freedom to pursue work that is rewarding personally and professionally. So, Jeff, welcome to the show.
Awesome, Roger. Thank you for having me. I'm really excited to chat with you.
Yeah, this is going to be quite fun. Now, obviously, I've already kind of revealed that you started back in 91, but I'd like you to share what brought you into the accounting profession. What kind of drew you to this line of work?
It's kind of an interesting thing. I think accountants are made, not born, and accounting just sort of was a natural fit for me. Honestly, I didn't love compliance, but I was really good at it. And my passion was to help people. And I felt that the best way I could help was being an accountant. And as my career evolved, I now refer to myself as a recovering accountant. And now I work with business owners directly on forward-looking projects, helping them actually grow their business. So I'd love to still reach out to accountants, help them, but my goal for accountants is to help them be more than just scorekeepers.
So this recovering accountant, I mean, that's kind of a loaded phrase right there. Tell me why you chose that phrase and what it really means for you.
It actually was a deliberate choice, and I'm not exaggerating here. A friend of mine was going through recovery for drug addiction, and he sort of explained, sort of the dysfunction that he experienced, how it impacted his life, how he lost friends, family. And I recognized that as an accountant, when I was in the accounting profession, a lot of my relationships suffered because I was working long hours, and I kind of saw it as an addiction. And so that's now my comment is, once you see the light, you want to be better, you want to recover. But instead of trying to keep score, now I'm focusing on value add. So recovery on a few levels.
So when you say keep score, obviously there's an element of numbers in that. What do you mean by no longer doing the accounting, but you're now keeping score of things?
Yeah, just to clarify that piece, because I am a very strange individual. I do very strange things. But most accountants focus exclusively on the history. So they're keeping track I call them the passive scorekeepers. They're the people watching a game, writing down the little marks, saying, okay, here's a point for this team, point for that team. In business, they're saying, okay, profit loss, taxes payable, very limited view. They're not actually watching the game, they're just keeping score. So what I like to do is with a business, we look forward and we make metrics that make sense that actually impact the business.
Very good. So these key performance indicators, is that where you like to spend your time then?
I think that's one of the areas I like to spend my time, but definitely the way I envision it, most accountants are trying, if we use the analogy of a business as a car, most accountants are trying to drive somewhere looking exclusively in the rear view mirror. It's like, how do you drive a car if you're not looking where you're going? So I like anything that's forward looking. So whether it's marketing plan, a sales strategy, or growth metrics, it's thinking about what's actually, filing a tax return, knowing how much taxes I owe is important, but it doesn't help me run my business. So I want to look at the numbers that help a business owner make business decisions.
Using your analogy, one of the things that I can kind of use to compare with that is that in accounting, you're right, there's that rear view mirror, whether it be on the side or there on the dash, that we're looking back at or with. And as we're looking back, we're seeing where we've come from. And there's a lot to be said there, but there's more information on the dashboard as to where we are currently and what's occurring now. And then, like you're describing, looking out the windshield, we're able to see where we're going. And the beauty of that analogy is, for those of us who drive cars, notice we don't look just over the hood of the vehicle out 5 feet or 10 feet. You're literally, depending on the speed you're driving, going to be there within a fraction of a second or a second. Where we're looking is much farther out in the future. And when you drive a vehicle looking out, say 25, 50 yards, all of a sudden what happens is the ride is smoother because you're not jerking from left to right as you're going around corners. You're able to actually keep and with that forward thinking, keep moving in a smooth way. So I like your analogy. So let me do this. You've brought up recovery and accounting. You've talked about the importance of focusing on really what's moving forward. A lot of people in the accounting profession for years have been talking about value-added services and moving away from the commodity type services that are provided by the accountants when doing the historical work. How do you feel what you're describing complements that discussion of value-added services and such?
I think, and to be gentle with those who love love the commodity services, I think the future of the profession is 100% in the value-added space. And just to give it another distinction, if you're keeping score, you're going to very calmly say, we're at a quarter tank of gas. That's what most accountants are doing, is they're just saying, factually, here's where we're at. What value-added services to me is, oh, by the way, you're going to run out of gas. You're going to need to fill up. Here's a station 20 miles ahead of you. Mm-hmm. So to me, value-added services, like especially in a COVID world, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say that word. If not, feel free to cut it out. But the reality, and this is what drove me to leave traditional accounting, is you see these bodies piling up around you as these businesses fail because nobody's giving them actual real advice that helps them go forward. So for me, I get really passionate, and you'll feel free to edit this for time, but you get me up on the soapbox, and I get really annoyed with the profession as a whole when we spend all our time talking about what happened and nobody's talking about what should happen or what can happen or what will happen. So for me, value-added services, it's important. You check your oil before you go on a trip. You fill gas. You make plans for the road trip. How do you run a business without some sort of forward-looking plan?
This definitely isn't going to be cut out because I think this is very, very appropriate. what I like about your analogy here is, yeah, you're checking the tires before you start driving. A professional driver actually walks around the vehicle before they take off. It's no different than a pilot before
Yeah.
takeoff, walking around the airplane and just checking everything. There's a lot to be gained from that familiarity of the vehicle before you begin your trip or start moving in that direction. The thing that I'd like to add to what you're describing here, and since we're kind of on this COVID thing, is when the onset of the pandemic and economic crisis came, I think a lot of accounting professionals could have found themselves still in that habitual role of just working with the client and giving them information. But when the business owner now needed to apply for some of the government relief packages that were available or the payroll protection plan, all of these applications necessitated accounting information. They had to come to the table with, here's what I was doing in 2019. Here's how this year is being different. The numbers that they used to apply for these things all came from the accounting. And if the client hadn't been current on their accounting information, they couldn't apply quickly and they were at a disadvantage. And so I think it became much more relevant as to triaging, that's the word I choose to use, triaging businesses. And this is something that I think you can add to. We've for years taught this principle that the business is truly a self-sustained, living, breathing entity, and the business owner is the steward over that company. And when that company is dealing with unhealthy things, something that's attacking its existence, we as accounting professionals can come in as business first responders and triage the client, assess the damages, and now with the receiving of the funds, we're able to now help go through a therapeutic stage where we're able to help the business owner decide how best to use these monies to keep the business alive and functioning and perhaps even more profitable than it began. So I like the analogy that you're sharing. So this voice that we're trying to give to the accounting profession, what would you say about an accountant being more proactive, more engaged with their client, being that of an advisor or a coach?
That is a great comment and a great question. And I'm going to pick it apart in a little bit because I want to talk to both pieces. But yes,
yeah,
I absolutely, totally love, I use the word triage a lot. So one thing I will say is, never before have compliance, commodity work been under more pressure to be fee sensitive. But that's the bad news. The good news is never before has value-added services come to the forefront where people are willing to pay for that value. Mm-hmm. And, it's the difference between, if you own a luxury car, you're going to pay somebody who is you're not hiring a mechanic to fix your car. You're hiring a technician. You want somebody who's an expert at that particular vehicle. Same with business. They don't want the platitudes. They don't want to know, what the tax rate was last year. Who cares? It is what it is. I can't change it. But I need to know, and this is what we teach in a lot of our stuff. We need to know how to triage. Where are we bleeding right now? What's the pain? How do we solve it? And again, I'm going to beat this poor car analogy to death, but, a traditional accountant will look at the car and say, yes, you have 4 tires. Thank you. That is technically true. Doesn't help me because are they bald? Are they good? Are they, is it? So the value add is the opportunity to say, hey, you've got 4 tires. You're going to be going off-road. You actually need to switch those tires and use this. So we have an unprecedented opportunity. And I find it funny because a lot of accountants will say, oh, I need to take more classes, or I need to learn this, or I need to learn that. The reality is we see in a career, we'll see hundreds of businesses. We know what key performance indicators are. We know how to calculate them. So it's just helping the client pick what's important. How do you triage it? Mm-hmm. And I think as professionals, we owe that duty of care to our clients. In the old days, we sort of just let the clients tell us what they need. The problem with that is the clients don't know what they need all the time. So we should be guiding them, giving them that proactive advice. So anything related to value-added services, that's my little soapbox, and I'll get on that all day. But in COVID times, there's some crazy things we can do And I say this because most accountants I know have contacts in the space. But for example, we could introduce our clients to social media marketers who can show them how they can grow their revenue. Again, we don't have to be the expert. We just have to know who to introduce them to. We can introduce them to marketers who are getting good results. We can help them find the budget to hire that student or a summer employee or an intern. Like, we can give them a lot of advice. And the hardest advice to give, and this is where I see a lot of accountants struggle, is sometimes you need to tell the client, maybe you shouldn't buy that shiny object, save that money and focus on your core business. Mm-hmm. So all of that is stuff, we have access to the numbers. We're experts at making the numbers do things. Why not use those numbers to help the business be healthier?
Yeah. So in this car analogy, let me share some additional information because I think it's very, very appropriate for what we're discussing. I had a conversation with a gentleman who happens to own a high-end vehicle. It's a Lamborghini. And as we were discussing the Lamborghini, he shared with me that it was cheaper than a therapist. He paid $1,000 a month as his car payment. And the $1,000 a month got him this phenomenal vehicle that he could only drive on occasion because the weather had to be a certain way and he can only drive it in certain places because it was low profile. Well, I was talking to him about the maintenance and he explained that it's $1 a mile for him to do maintenance. And the only two places he could go in for like an oil change and so forth happened to be in a city that was about 100 miles north. I live in Utah and it was in northern Utah, or he had to drive all the way to Las Vegas. And I jokingly said, well, that's kind of a forced way to have to go to Las Vegas, and he chuckled as well. But the point is not that it's meant to knock any of the other places you can go to get your vehicle serviced. I'm not trying to say they don't provide quality services for a traditional vehicle, but he's not going to take his Lamborghini down to the local corner oil lube place to have them do his oil change. That's because he recognizes how valuable that vehicle is. And likewise, a business owner, when they're running a company that provides for their livelihood, for their family's well-being, puts a roof over their head and feeds their family, it's not something that you are casual about. And so working with a professional is, I think, quite important. Now, you brought up something that I think is worth addressing. You were talking about with advice or advisory roles, giving information to the business owner and giving them, offering suggestions and giving them input. A lot of the accounting professionals I work with really struggle having the confidence to give that kind of advice or give that kind of input. And so one of the things that I've always encouraged them to recognize is it's less having all the right answers, it's more having all the right questions. Rather than finding yourself as an accounting professional always telling the business owner what to do and whether they do it is their choice, I rather like to look at it as I have the right questions. I see things that need to be asked and I ask them, and the business owner is then in a position where they have to think through, answer, and come up with their response to the situation. And what I love about that is it's putting me in a better position because I don't need to know everything. I can respect the fact that they're the expert about their own business. But secondly, I find that it also empowers them because the answers they come up with are their own and they can own those. So what would you add to that kind of consultative process?
I would wholeheartedly agree. And I think my comment that's exactly the approach I take. And by the way, there is a coaching book out there. I can't remember what it's called, but it's like the book of coaching questions. And it's the hardest read you'll ever get through because it's all about questions you should be asking. And to me, and I'm glad you brought it up, the fundamental challenge for most accountants, and I speak from past experience, it's really hard to go from that confident, I'm the expert, I can quote, lines from the Internal Revenue Code, I'm the smartest person in the room, to my job is to ask questions. And a lot of accountants feel very vulnerable about that. But here's the thing, and I'll put a fine point on it. We are the experts at business in general. I love how you put it, and I will echo this. The client is the expert at their business. So our job is to ask the client the questions and have the backup. Because a lot of entrepreneurs, they make gut decisions and sometimes they're right, sometimes they're wrong, sometimes they flip a coin. Our job is to ask them the questions so that they know what's important to ask. For example, if they're looking at, do I buy or lease a car? We can give them the costs, benefit, the return on investment from both sides. We're not there to tell them you should buy the car. We're there to give them the facts and ask them the questions so that they make the right decision for them. Because I think that's in life the biggest, whenever somebody wants an absolute answer, they'll say, what's best? My answer is always, it depends. And here's what it depends on. So as an accountant, our job is to understand what it depends actually means and ask all of those it depends type questions, and then say to the client, based on these facts that we've helped you analyze, what's the right decision for your business?
Yeah.
And again, it's not boring them with facts and figures, but sometimes it's asking them, for example, if somebody wants to buy a building, did you look at the zoning laws? Little things like, can you get insurance for that venture? Like, just asking them, because in the passionate moment of creation, entrepreneurs are thinking about what's possible. Maybe they need somebody to ask the questions about what's the risk of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe they need to say, okay, that's possible. What else is possible? So we need to become experts at questions, which feels a little like a cop-out to people. But the reality is, the less I know about something, the better a coach I am, because I'll ask clarifying questions. I'll ask questions about, what do you do? I don't bring as many assumptions to the table.
Yeah, what I like about what you're describing is we bring a perspective, and we cause them to be introspective when we ask the right questions. And I'm hoping that with our being great at asking the right questions, we're causing them to think and realize things that they may not have considered, thus realizing our worth. So that's, I think, very important. So I think this is an excellent way to transition into a question about masterminds. I know masterminds is something that's important in your world, and I know that you see value in having multiple people participating. Tell everybody what you understand a mastermind to be. How do you define it?
Excellent question. I am absolutely fanatical about masterminds. And to me, it was an answer to the question, what's the fundamental flaw in an accounting practice? And it's usually a matter of scale, because even the most enlightened accountants tend to work one-on-one with their clients. They trade time for money. So my concept of a mastermind, and this is based on a lot of research, but I would credit my awareness to Napoleon Hill and his book, Think and Grow Rich.
Yes.
So basically, the way I would define a mastermind is a group of two or more people coming together to solve a common problem. So a lot of people use the word mastermind loosely, or they'll throw it around. But in my vision of a mastermind, we all bring, regardless of the group size, we all bring some expertise to the table. And sometimes the expertise is answers, sometimes it's questions. So a true mastermind is not an expert dictating to the masses. It's a group of peers. The most famous mastermind in history that I can think of is King Arthur and the Knights of the Round Table.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody was equal. Everybody was expected to contribute to questions and solve it. But a true mastermind is people working together to help each other grow their businesses or solve a problem in their business. But it's really about contribution and dialogue. And truly, I believe accountants are naturals at this, because fundamentally, we're trained to ask questions. We just lost sight of that, and somewhere we thought that the words "I don't know" meant weakness or failure. But truly, if you ask really powerful questions, even if you don't, most experts will ask questions they know the answer to. With being in a mastermind, you need to ask questions you don't know the answer to and have no hope of knowing the answer to. And believe it or not, asking a good question, people will actually think you're smarter than if you can recite the Internal Revenue Code front to back.
That's true. Yeah, the intelligence goes up when you ask an intriguing, a well thought out question. So that's an excellent point. So with masterminds, one of the things that I find fascinating with the whole principle, and you're right, Napoleon Hill described it phenomenally. The first thing is as the facilitator of the mastermind, you have a phenomenal role because you have an opportunity to pose the questions and begin the discussions. But honestly, with a good group, sit back and watch the exchange take place. And so you get to really be on the peripheral, kind of mediating the whole discussion. You can definitely participate, but the beauty of it is the power's in the group think. The group think is where you're able to combine experiences of all the other business owners with their perspectives and come to a group think, which happens to be proven to say it's usually the better of all the choices that any one individual would have come up with. So what we want to do is with a mastermind group is, I would imagine, bring to the forefront a issue, a challenge that someone's facing in the group itself, and have everyone collaborate and help that individual see options and let them choose which is the best for them. Is that a pretty good summation of it?
That is a great summation. And one of the things I would say is, this will offend the accountants out there, but bear with me. My partner, Tom Matson, he likes to say that 1 + 1 = 11. And that's the power of a mastermind. It's always about synergy, and the end result is always greater than what the individual components are. But in a true mastermind setting, the least qualified person usually comes up with the most unique and innovative solution. And I see that in a lot of industries, but a lot of industries, they look to their competitors and say, how can we be better than our competitor? But in a mastermind group, you'll look at other industries and say, how do we adapt that to our industry to make our industry better? So typically when you're just, trying to one up your competitor, 1 + 1 = 2 always. But if you're trying to look at, for example, when I look at the accounting industry, I can help you be slightly better by, benchmarking you against, industry leaders. But what if we looked at Disneyland, which feels like a very random example, but what if we looked at Disneyland and we looked at their version of service and how they treat their customers? What if we brought some of those best practices from Disney into the accounting space?
Mm-hmm.
We can grow significantly by adding that new insight.
So what we're defining here is, as an accounting professional, to expand beyond traditional accounting services, providing the financial reports, giving an analysis of those reports, and as you said at the very beginning, giving them some forecasting, some budgeting, some preparatory type information. We're now saying let's move from that into more of a value-added service, a consultative service, and in that new relationship get paid differently than for the accounting work we're doing. Now we're getting paid as a business coach. And in that, one of the services that we can provide is, rather than having to be the expert and know everything, we're asking the right questions, and we're bringing into this element a mastermind opportunity where we could have each of our clients who are paying for this additional service sit around a table and discuss challenges that are being faced within the group, and as a group think, address those. So what's the biggest challenge that's faced by the accountant as he's trying to leverage masterminds in their organization, creating it, having it, holding them?
This could be a full hour in and of itself. Actually, we do 3-hour classes just on this. The single biggest challenge for accountants and we can talk about masterminds, we can talk about group coaching, but the single biggest challenge is that a lot of accountants make the mistake that they believe they sell time. And so when you think you sell time, you're always focused on time. But with a mastermind, your focus should be on results. What value am I adding? And again, this is helping a client add a 0 to their revenue. So if they're doing $1 million, we're trying to figure out how to help them get to 10 million.
Mm-hmm.
So it's playing a big game and nobody cares about the time you put in. But the magic of it is the more value you add to the client, the more they're willing to pay you. So the hardest thing is that mindset of I trade dollars for hours or hours for dollars.
I would agree. That is a big change. Once the accountant can get out of that hourly mindset and billable hours, there's a whole new world out there as to how to price and work with your clients. So the next question, and this is more kind of like a rapid fire, because I agree with you. This could be many hours that we could be talking on this, but looking at masterminds, for someone that's not familiar with one or hasn't participated, how frequently does a group meet, and how long do they meet for?
Excellent question. So an hourly accountant, and I'm just going to give this as a quick distinction, yep. An hourly accountant will try to minimize how often we meet and how much time we spend together. Mm-hmm. That sucks the value out of the whole mastermind. We looked at it from what's the result we want and how do we get that? So if we want our clients to make progress, to get results, human nature is if you meet once a month, I'm going to defer it and I'm going to do my homework the night before. Well, that doesn't work. You can't wake up the day before a marathon having not trained and run 1,000 miles that day and say, okay, I'm ready for the marathon. So we meet at least twice a month for 3 hours at a stretch. And the reason we do that is we want to keep them accountable. So we have a process that, we have quick check-ins every week. But basically, we meet every 2 weeks, so everybody is making progress throughout the month. And we have 3-hour meetings. Now, the key to our 3-hour meetings is we have a very tight schedule, and we start on time, we end on time, and we follow our agenda. So a 3-hour meeting, just to have a 3-hour meeting, doesn't add value to anyone. Mm-hmm. But the meeting, and that's what we do, we've structured our meetings. Every piece of it is how do we get them results today?
So you're following an agenda, and everyone knows what that agenda is, and that meeting has purpose because we're not just getting together. We actually have an agenda that we're going to use. You're meeting twice a month for 3 hours each time. What's the average size of a group? What's too small? What's too big?
So we've studied this over the years, and absolute minimum, less than 4, it gets really weird and awkward, and it becomes very close to groupthink. You're not going to get results. So 4 is our bare minimum. We like 8 to 12. That's, in my experience, almost anybody can facilitate a group of 8 to 12. Once you get above 12, you have to become better at being a facilitator. So a great facilitator can run a group and have everybody participate up to about 24. But in my experience, if you get to 12, the value starts to dilute and it's harder to keep the schedule. So I'd rather have 2 groups of 12 than 1 group of 24.
Agreed. One of the things that I've personally experienced is when you get over that 10 to 12 point, there's 2 dynamics that occur. One, there's somebody in the group that's not benefiting because their issues aren't being brought up. There's not enough time to address everyone's concern or question. And the second thing that I found is when you get groups that are too large, by human nature, there's always going to be dominant people that are always needing to speak. And then there's going to be people that are more docile. Yes, they're business owners, they run companies, but that dynamic comes into where there's somebody in the group that's not talking very often, participating, collaborating, or contributing. And so if you keep it small enough, you're able to make sure everybody is participating. And that's where the benefit is, because then there's that collaborative spirit. The next question, and I'm going to leave masterminds with this because I'm going to go into something else. Masterminds, an accountant hearing this, learning about it, it intrigues them. They're like, okay, so I'm getting a concept of what it looks like. It's starting to make sense. I can't pull it off today hearing what I've just heard, but I'm intrigued enough by it that I'd like to pursue this. But how much money could I expect from somebody paying to participate? You're talking about 6-hour commitments in the month for meetings. You're talking about all these different relationships. What kind of revenue? Forget my time commitment and what I'm making from this relationship. Just what am I charging for a participant? And we'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. And again, it depends on the value you're adding. We focus on growth. So our masterminds are minimum. And by the way, a lot of people say, oh, masterminds suck. I was in one with my cousin and we didn't get any results. Free masterminds, in my opinion, never work.
You get your money's worth.
You get your money's worth. So one of the things I would say to all of the accountants listening, and this was an aha moment, I heard the choir coming down from heaven on this one. Clients that pay attention. So if we charge $25,000 for our masterminds, we get their undivided attention. So the accountants out there doing the math, I'll save you some time. 12 participants, $25,000. It's a $300,000 a year revenue stream for a mastermind. And your time commitment is about 110 hours a year. So do the math on that, but it's probably, in my experience with most accountants, it's the highest and best use of your time.
Yes, I think it's taking the business model that you have and adding a phenomenal service. It provides an excellent new revenue stream, a line item on your P&L that you can be proud of. But I think also for the accounting professional that's been doing this for a number of years, it's as if you get to the pinnacle of the Maslow's hierarchy. You're now giving back and you're actually now paying it forward. You're bringing your experience, your insights, your perspective to this groupthink, and you're now facilitating all these other business owners. I think there's so many dynamics that are so wonderful with this business model, and I appreciate your sharing all that. So here's the next thing. I'm going to do a sponsor mention here just real quickly, and then we're going to go into some other topics. But as a mention for our sponsors, we have two today. The first being Universal Accounting Center. There was a mention earlier in our discussion of becoming a business first responder, and what Universal Accounting is offering is a book called Red to Black. It is the how-to guide for accounting professionals to actually service their clients with a quick turnaround guide. It's intended to actually help them with the most pressing issue that many businesses face, and that's cash flow management. So for you to get a copy of the ebook Red to Black and use this as your guide in servicing your clients' needs and helping them take their business from red to black, I encourage you to get a copy of Red to Black in 30 days today. It is the Small Business Accountant's Guide to quick turnarounds. The second that I'd like to offer is Jeff is offering a free master class. It's basically where he's teaching three key things. It's why it's easier to 10x than double your business, your 10 revenue generating super strategies, and how to free up at least 10 of your hours a week in your business. I invite you to take advantage of this opportunity to participate. And for this, you need to go to the description of the podcast, and there you'll find a link to go and actually learn more and see how you can take advantage of this free masterclass with Jeff. So Jeff, just so you know, I'm sitting here like I believe you may be in my Hawaiian shirt. This is homage to you. Tell me about your Hawaiian shirts.
I actually, long time ago, I realized I used to do public speaking as an accountant, and I was taught that we had to wear gray or blue suits. And what I found was I got really stuffy people that weren't fun to work with. And when they came to talk to me at my office, they're like, "Where's the suit?" And what I realized was that was their measure of who they wanted to work with. So probably about 5 years ago, I donated all my suits, ties, polo shirts, everything. And 100% of my wardrobe is Hawaiian shirts. And basically my thought process was I like to have fun. I like to get to know my clients. I'm deeply involved in their businesses. I want fun people. So when I do speaking now, fun people follow me, and I connect and I get my ideal client through selection. And all I did was I chose, and a friend of mine said, well, a good speaker's comfortable in whatever they wear. For me, it's about connecting with people at a more personal level. The other fun thing that I discovered is people are used to Hawaiian shirts. It signifies relaxation, vacation, fun. So I get way less uptight people coming to me. And fun fact, it actually annoys the really uptight people, so they don't waste their time or mine talking to me.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I think you've done well is branded yourself. And in that branding, I agree. You're going to, just by the very nature of the dress, I think draw certain types of people to you. So that only makes sense. I've gone through similar branding type opportunities. And I think it says a lot when you can actually have a very unique or known look where people can just in a glance of a crowd pull you out just because there you are. Here's the next question. There's a pet peeve about accounting professionals. We were talking about this at one time where there's a frustration. They're slow to what? What would you say they're slow to do?
I think the first thing that comes to mind is slow to change. That's probably the biggest. Slow to change, slow to innovate. We are by natural, we're fact finders. We need to innovate a little faster.
And I think there's a little bit of risk aversion in there, being a little resistant to that change, like you described it. When I'm working with accounting firm owners, one of the things that I see is they'll oftentimes cognitively, they'll logically understand the opportunity, but they're slow to implement. And there's a little bit of reluctance in the unknown. And so one of the things that I'm always finding is that I'm challenging them to have faith in the process, but more importantly, just the principle of baby steps. Just take little steps, trust the process, baby steps. But to stay stagnant and not change, especially in the economy that we're in today, you have to evolve or you're going to die. And it's Darwinism at its best, in the sense that if you don't evolve, the chaos that's going on around us in the economy, the needs that the small business owner has to stay alive and get the information they need from the accounting professional to do so that they can make more informed business decisions, is so critical. And so for us to be complacent or distant or non-engaging, I don't think is an option. So we need to be providing those value-added services. So what advice would you have for an accounting professional when looking at their business?
I love the phrase evolve or die. I actually did a webinar on that, really annoyed people, but truly, I mean, that's the key. Darwinism doesn't care about your story. Darwin doesn't care about what you're afraid of. Darwinism is a thing, survival of the most fit or survival of the fittest, however you want to quote it. So my advice to accountants is find one thing. Don't get overwhelmed by the 1,000 things, because you will do this. I know you. You don't need shelf help where you buy something and then you put it on your bookshelf and never look at it. You need help. So think about, what's my one thing I can do today to make my business better or make my clients' businesses better. Do that one thing over and over and over again until you're comfortable, and then do another thing. Doesn't have to be big, massive leaps. Just take progress, as Roger said, baby steps.
Very good. Very good. So I know you're someone for mentoring and coaching. Who's been a good mentor for you?
I think my biggest mentor, he's semi-retired right now, but Rick Solomon, he runs the Center for Enlightened Business. Mm-hmm. In the Mastermind space, Tom Matson, he's now my partner in Get It Together Masterminds.
Very good. What's the thing that you've learned from either of them?
With Rick, he was also a recovering CPA, and he taught sales skills. So big thing I learned from him was letting go, trusting the process. And with Tom, he really brought home the power of that group think. How as a group, we are so much stronger than we are alone.
Very good. Very good. So if you had a superpower, what power would it be?
My superpower is connecting seemingly random people and helping them solve problems and do business together. So I'm really good at asking questions and then connecting the right people.
I can definitely attest to that.
Getting out of the way and letting them do what they do best.
Oh, good. I like that. Yeah, as a connector, you're definitely a who's who. So I like that. That's been very helpful, and I appreciate your introductions that you've given. So let me do this. I'm going to wrap this up, and then I'm going to come back to you, Jeff, for just a final thought. But real quickly, let me summarize what I've heard today, and I'm going to start with our sponsors. Just a real quick plug again for Universal Accounting Center. If you do not have and have not yet read Red to Black, get a copy of the book Red to Black. It is the how-to guide for for accounting professionals to help with the most common issue faced by businesses, which is cash flow management. It's literally meant to help you move into that consultative value-added service of advising your clients and helping them manage what is so important, and that is the lifeblood of their company, the cash flow. The second thing is Jeff's offer for you to participate in this free opportunity to come and learn a little bit about your business, and in the process, get these answers to these very important 3 questions in his offer of actually learning why it's easier to 10x your business than double your business, the 10 revenue generating super strategies, and how to free up at least 10 hours of your week in your business. So for that information, go to the description within the podcast, and of that description, or within that description, you'll get the appropriate links. Now, as a summary of our conversation, I loved how we were talking about mastermind groups. I think for many accounting professionals, even those of us that are familiar with it, we're not leveraging them as much as we can, either individually participating ourselves in one, or doing it as part of our business model and facilitating those and having paid participants joining in. So definitely take some time to learn a little bit more about those. And maybe if you've never experienced it, first join one so that you can experience it, and then look at later in your business model, perhaps adopting and incorporating it. The other thing that I thought was helpful is this whole recovery accountant concept. Being a recovered accountant is really something to think about. It's where we're now becoming much more forward thinking in the services that we provide as accounting professionals. So with that in mind, let me also invite you to go and listen to our other episodes and subscribe to the podcast. We're going to be having a number of additional episodes that are focused on tips and tricks to help you build the premier accounting firm. We also invite you to contact Universal Accounting Center, find out what information you need to apply these principles in your business, and literally become the premier accounting firm in your area. For more information, go to universalaccountingschool.com or contact us by calling 801-265-3777. So, Jeff, any final thoughts?
I think my big final thought is just get started and do it. I really believe take one step, take one action. So there's a lot we can do. Try not to do it all, just do one thing. Keep it simple.
Keep it simple. I love it. So with that in mind, remember this: if it's about accounting, it's universal. Take care, everyone.